if you've got a deck, you're probably spending most of the summer on it. So maybe it's time to give it a little bit of love. If yours is in need of a fresh coat of stain, listen up. Sharon's here to get it looking great again. And Sharon, I know we get into this every season, but it is one of the most asked questions. We know it's all about the prep, so we'll get to that in just a moment. But usually, people want to decide on the stain and the color right away. So how did you decide which stain to use on your sister's deck?
It's so true, Tracy. I mean, the color is the fun part for sure, so you want to deal with that first, usually. And there are a ton of choices, and it depends on the condition of the wood, but there's decorative and functional choices, so between opacities and colors. So in the case of my sister's deck, it was, you think about the condition, right? And it was around 2.5 years old. They had a lot of sun, so it hadn't weathered substantially, not any mildew from trees or anything like that. They get a lot of sun, and it had never been stained or painted before. So it was kind of like the best case scenario, to be honest, so it was pretty easy. We still did have to sand, but because it was in really great shape, I wanted to use something that just really enhanced the color, and I think that's what most people want to do. If you've invested in a nice new wood deck, you just want to show off that natural wood color. So the first choice for most people would be something translucent. So here you can see this is just the natural, actual cedar, and here is just a hint of a translucent stain in a cedar color. So it just really enhances the natural wood color. So that's a good sort of first step when you've got wood, you've got really nice wood, or semi-transparent. So that's what I did here at my sister's deck. I used a semi-transparent, and you get a little bit more color. So because there are a lot of color options, there's around 75 color options in semi-transparent, that is something that a lot of people want to do. Now, if you have wood that's maybe imperfect and you want to hide some of those imperfections, then I really love the semi-solid stain. So we've kind of got something in between there. And what I love about that is that you get more color, so it hides a little bit more, but you still get the texture of the wood. You know, you can see here that you can still see the knot. So again, you get that lovely sort of warmth coming through, but a lot more color, so it hides imperfections. But if you want something completely solid, you want to go with the solid stain that's totally opaque, and that hides all sorts of sins. So if you've got new wood mixed in with old wood and it's like a quilt, you cover it with solid stain, you still get the wood texture, which you might lose if you use a floor paint or something, but that wood texture in the solid stain is there, but you get a full color coverage.
Okay, that's a good little lesson right there. It's also nice to be able to use a semi-transparent stain for one element and then maybe a solid for something else, and you can add some contrast, right?
Absolutely, Trace, and that's what I did with my sister's deck here. We did the semi-transparent on the decking boards, and then we went solid for the vertical. And I like that color contrast, and then you can start to feel a little bit more like you're taking your interior design ideas and bringing them outside. But one thing I really want to mention as an important tip is when you're testing out the colors, don't just look at the brochures. The brochures are great, but we're obviously only picking one type of wood. Semi-transparent stain especially looks so different depending on the wood. So here I've got the same color, Hamilton blue on pine. Here I've got it on new pressure treated, and here I've got it on cedar. So you can see how different the color looks.
Absolutely. That is a really good tip to give. Yeah, make sure you put it on the piece of wood you're going to be staining so you know exactly how it's going to turn out. Now, I mentioned Cher earlier. A lot of work went into getting Jackie's deck looking this great, so we got to talk about the prep. Let's talk about the prep.
Yeah. I know, you don't want to hear that part, but the reality is it does take a lot. I mean, wooden decks, wooden anything outside gets a lot of abuse. So you really do have to maintain it. And in this case, we were pretty lucky, as I said. We gave it a really good sanding, and then it was ready to accept the stain. But let's talk about the worst case scenario. So maybe you have a solid stain or you have paint and you want to get rid of it and see what's under, see if the wood is still in good shape to do semi-transparent. So in that case, you really have to strip the stain off. So you can get a heavy-duty sander if your deck is nice and smooth, and you can get a big sander. That will take it all off. But if not, you can use a chemical to wash it off. The remove chemical, you sort of wash that on, scrub it down, let it sit for 15-20 minutes. It depends on the condition of the wood. And then you can use a pressure washer, take that off, and then see where you're at. Still sand it, stain it. If your wood's really weathered, and I've experienced this one because I let my fence go for over 10 years, I neglected it, I admit it. And so when I went to stain it, I really had to use the restore. I had to restore the wood and basically get the dead fibers off of the wood before it would accept the stain. So that's important for weathered wood. And then maybe you just need to clean it. Maybe it's not in that bad shape. You've just, just over the season, you can just clean it and it's dirty. So then you can just use the simple clean product, and that takes off any dirt or anything that's going to prevent the stain from absorbing into the wood. Because that's the key thing to remember with stain. It needs to penetrate into the wood, and that's what allows it to last a much longer time.
And that's why the prep is so important. Yeah, because if you skip all those steps,
Yes.
your stain isn't going to get in there. It's just going to strip off, or it's not going to stay. So you've seen our fence, Sharon. We're like you. We waited way too long. So how often would you tell people they need to do maintenance on their wood deck?
Well, you know what, Trace, with wood, I have to say, maybe if you live in California or something, you don't have to do it as often. But a Canadian climate is not so good to our wooden surfaces. So the snow, especially the deck, especially the horizontal surfaces, it gets the snow, it gets everything sitting on it. So at the very least, you have to clean it every year. Like you can get the clean product, or you can just sort of hose it down. You don't need to pressure wash it necessarily. Just hose it down, clean it off, and keep it clean. So keep things from sticking from it. And again, if you're reapplying a semi-transparent stain, you probably need to do it every year to 2 years, depending on the condition of the wood. If you go more into solid stains, they tend to last a little bit longer. So I would say anywhere from a year to maybe 3.5 years, you will need to start reapplying the product. So that's the reality of wood. But we love our wood, so we want to stain it, we want to keep it looking beautiful.
We sure do, and thank you for giving us the reality that we need. You got to serve it up real, right? So great info. Thanks, Cher. You can find all of her tips and instructions up on our website, cityline.tv.